just do it without the microphones and just project a little bit more.
We have 4 people watching.
Can you hear anything?
No. Just talk.
Hello?
Can you hear us?
I can.
Minor technical things. Okay, so I think we should just cut it, honestly.
Just do this.
And and we'll just take that thing off.
What do I do? Shut it off?
Yeah. I'll just throw this back through my shirt. Am I on film right now? Yeah, shirt. Okay, so yay!
People watching me.
Yay! So, everyone's watching now. Okay. Volume issues? Is everything okay? Where's Julie? Are you on it? Can you hear us? Oh, she can hear us from that thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, just start, I guess.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for the slightly late start due to some technical problems. We had a couple problems just sort of sorting out our new microphone system. Anyways, hopefully you'll hear me now. If you can't hear me, please comment on the video so we can address that immediately before we start into our talk. But as we're starting, I should start, I guess. My name is Alex. This is Lexa. We work here at the BC Wildlife Park in the education department. So normally we do these kind of talks for the general public, doing sort of events and birthdays as well. And so we're both really, really excited to come and show you some snakes today. We have a ball python and a rubber boa. And we talk a whole bunch about sort of their similarities, their differences, and then obviously get some good close-ups, hopefully, of the actual animals. And I think with that, maybe we should go into some other differences.
Sure, yeah. So boas and pythons are kind of what we're going to be talking about today, and so they can be kind of hard to tell apart sometimes. So we're going to talk a little bit about similarities and differences. So how they're different. Boas, they're actually found in what's called the Old World and the New World. So the Old World is Africa, Asia, and Australia, and the New World is Central, South, and North America. And pythons, they're only found in the Old World, so only Africa, Asia, and Australia. Another way they're different is boas usually, most of them have live young, whereas pythons will lay eggs. And then some ways that they're similar, both are obviously constrictors, so they will squeeze their prey and suffocate it before they eat it. And then they both actually have 2 lungs as well, whereas most other snakes only have 1 lung. So that's kind of some differences and some similarities kind of tell them apart, things like that. So Alex is going to introduce our first special guest, which is Kiara, and she's a bull python.
Just before I get this snake out, actually, just to get the intro, I want to address something else. We do have a different cameraman today. Julie, who only films our live encounters, is currently hiding in my office back there because she's terrified of snakes. And I want to show, me and Lexa are going to show everyone why you shouldn't be terrified of snakes. You should be cautiously aware of snakes. And so this first snake is a ball python. And you actually can't find these snakes in North America naturally. However, they are extremely popular in the pet trade. So this is Kiara, and she's our resident ball python here at the park. I'm going to give a little close-up as well, just not get too close. And so I want to get a really close-up to show you a couple cool things. One is just how sort of thick and heavy this snake really is. She's really actually pretty heavy. They're what's called thick-bodied snakes, and they're also ball pythons. So it has sort of 2 things where if a predator comes and tries to hunt them and attack them, they'll actually sort of wrap around in their own bodies, they'll ball up, and they'll hide their heads, all those vital bits of the head, the eyes, the brain, and wrap that really, really tightly in those coils. And what that does is prevent predators from basically getting to those vital organs, those vital parts of the snake. So it's really, really cool just how strong they can be when coiling around themselves. They're also incredibly strong because, like Lex was saying, they're constrictors. They have one really special thing though. A lot of people think snakes hunt or can be very active hunters, and a lot of snakes are very active hunters. These snakes are more what we call an ambush hunter. And so they'll kind of hang out in a burrow or in dry brush in the savanna and the grasslands the whole time. And what they'll actually do is when a rodent or a small mouse, something like that, comes along, they'll actually sort of strike out from that spot they're hiding in and ambush that animal and then constrict around them very, very, very tightly. So the idea behind a constricting animal, both of these ones are constrictors, is that they want to cut off all the blood flow. And they want to basically cut off the oxygen, cut off the blood flow until the animal dies. Because they don't want to try to eat that animal before it's dead. It could wake up, it could attack their insides, it could really, really hurt them. So again, these snakes, I kind of want to talk about their reproduction a little bit, just because I think it's really cool. But first I want to explain why she's doing this. So she's kind of wrapping around me like she would if I was a tree branch. And a lot of snakes, we work with a lot of snakes here at the wildlife park, especially in our department. A lot of snakes will use arms very similar to tree branches, and they'll sort of hang off in the same way. So she wants to hold her body weight to essentially hang off of me as best as she can. And I'm trying to just sort of maneuver her so she stays as comfortable as possible while being in camera view and not beside my face. These snakes are not venomous, they're not incredibly dangerous, because they do make really good pets. They're really, really common as pets. Actually, around 30,000 to 50,000 of these snakes get transported to America for the pet trade every single year. And a huge amount of those are wild born in Africa, in those grasslands, and that sort of African savannas. So you wouldn't find these outside of sort of northern or central Africa, western, northern, central. And so, trying to get rid of my face. She's going for hotspots, basically. So she's trying to find the hotspots on me, which on humans would be back of the neck, armpits, elbow pits is a good one, which is why you can see her curling up so heavily, and also handcuffing me with her body. And so these snakes, in sort of their reproduction and conservation I want to talk about, they reproduce every single year, and they reproduce, on average, they sort of say 1 to 11. It's more like 4, 5, or 6 eggs a year, 5 eggs a year. 0 from all the hotspots. But a huge amount of those, again, will get taken out of the wilds of Africa, out of those savannas, out of the African grasslands, to be transported to North America or to other parts of the world to be pets. People love having ball pythons as pets because they aren't, we like to say they're very lethargic, would be a good word. They're not incredibly active. Again, they're ambush hunters. They're not going to be running around their enclosure, well, sliding around their enclosure. And they don't tend to, they tend to be really what's called beginner snakes, because again, they're not very active. They tend to sort of hang out the whole time. They actually are very easy to pick up, despite them being really heavy. If I hold it for too long, you can see my arm gets a little bit like iffy. And so despite all of that, we at the Wildlife Park always like to say that we don't endorse reptile pets. Most of these reptiles have a lot of really specific care. And so these snakes can live a very long life. They live about 20 years in the wild, up to 50 in captivity with the right care. Because a lot of reptiles, when they come into captivity into human care, don't get the very specific care requirements that they might need. And a lot of them could honestly end up living half of their lifespan that they would in the wild, just due to how extreme and how necessary it is to care for like these very specific things. A good example with these snakes is they need lots of water. And so while you would find them in the savannas and the grasslands, they're always very close to water. And that has to do with shedding. So I'll tell you this real quick. We have a huge snake shed here. There's actually a Burmese python here. I'll come on this side just to show just how big it is. And so this shed covers this whole table. It's a little under 12 feet. It's about 11 feet. These snakes don't get quite that big. These snakes sort of max out at about 4'11", a little under 5 foot. But these pythons, and just how big these snakes can get, no, the shed I'm talking about. And so this isn't a good example of shed because it's taking off the actual skin. But these snakes need lots of water to facilitate that shed. So whenever they get bigger, are you in shed?
Yeah.
So I'll get shed in a second. Whenever snakes get bigger, these snakes are very specific for this. They want to soak their skin a little bit to almost try to loosen off that old skin. This is a good example of gopher snake shed. And so you'll see it sort of comes off in this translucent way. And every time, normally it's once or twice a year, that a snake gets bigger, it has to shed all of its old skin and all of its old scales. These snakes need lots of water to do that because they are just so big and so heavy. Some snakes don't need quite as much water, some snakes shed very easily. You'll often find her when she's getting ready to shed, here in the wildlife park. We'll find her in her little bath area. But a lot of pet owners will see ball pythons and think, okay, there's no need for water, they're from Africa, they're from Savannah, and then the snakes won't shed properly, they have really rough sheds. So again, just the way we care for these animals can be incredibly important. As well as, of course, the conservation issue, which is a huge amount of the ball pythons we find in pet stores, because you go find them in most pet stores, come here as imports taken directly from the wild. And that's never good for the wild, that's never good for the animal, that's never an appropriate thing to do, right? She's actually kind of a cool case. She's not a pet surrender. She's from Carl Larson, a researcher over at TRU, who donated her to the wildlife park in 2013, and she's about 15 years old. So like I said before, in proper conditions and proper care, these snakes can live about 50 years on average in captivity, and in the wild it'd be a lot closer to 20. And that's again just because of food scarcity, because they need to hunt for all their food, other animals preying on them. Whereas in captivity, you only have that issue. You don't have survival. It's kind of a luxury to live here instead.
One thing too that's really cool about this type of snake is that in Africa they're actually super important in controlling pest populations, especially rats. And they estimate that it saves like millions of dollars in pest control. So they're actually super important for keeping sort of rat populations in check over there as well, which is kind of neat.
I'm trying to get my one hand out to put her away. She's really gripped on. So I think that's all I really want to focus on with these guys. The last thing I want to talk about is I'm going to bring up a really close one of this skull. Yeah, you can hold the skull.
Sure.
So let's come up close with the skull. That's actually Anaconda Skull, but it's a really cool example to show how these skulls work and how most snake skulls are shaped the exact same way, especially in the constrictor family where you have the anacondas, the pythons, the boas. And so you can see the way those teeth work as well, like I was saying before. Those teeth work to sort of grab and help keep whatever they're eating inside their mouths. So they're all frozen. So say an animal came in, it has a really hard time pulling itself out if it was still alive. And that's part of why they want to ensure that the animal's dead or essentially completely dead before they even start eating it. If that animal tries to escape, it'll scratch at the inside of their mouths, it'll scratch up the inside of their bodies, and can reach all of those really vulnerable bits that the snake has. Wow, she's getting heavy.
Yeah. Snakes too, they can also open their jaws 150 degrees, and that's because of the special bone. It's called a quadrate bone. Lots of people think snakes unhinge their jaw, but they actually have this special bone that just allows them to open their mouths really wide as well.
Yeah. While Alex is putting Kiara away, I'll just introduce our next special guest. Her name's Karina, and she is a rubber boa. Just make sure she's all.
Let me just make sure that, the cover's on as well.
Yeah. There we go. All right, so I'll get Karina out. So the first thing we'll kind of notice is definitely a size difference. I'll bring her closer. So like I mentioned, she is a rubber boa, and she came to the park in about, I think last year actually, 2019. We think she's about 10 years old, and she actually came as a surrendered pet. So it's actually illegal to own rubber boas here in BC. And when the people who had her found that out, they did bring her here to the park, which is really great instead of kind of releasing her out randomly into the wild. It was really great that they brought her here. So she's called a rubber boa. Kind of obviously she looks like rubber, so she's got super loose skin and really small scales, which kind of gives that rubbery appearance. And this is kind of a typical coloring for this type of snake, kind of an olivey green color, but they can also be kind of a darker brown as well. She's about 10 years old. We estimate that they can live to be up to 30 years. So they're quite a long-lived snake, just like Kiara the ball python. And they grow to be about 30 to 80 centimeters, so a lot smaller
than Kiara. Just like her though, she is, Karina here is a carnivore, so she does eat meat, and she just kind of eats mainly smaller things. So small mice, kind of nestling birds, salamanders, things like that. And she is a constrictor, so she will squeeze her prey and then swallow it whole. They don't chew their food or anything like that. This type of snake usually only reproduces every 4 years. They'll usually come out in the spring after hibernation and mate, and then they'll have their babies in August. But what's really neat about this type of snake is she has live young. So the babies will actually develop inside her body, and then when she births them, they look like little earthworms, little small pink earthworms. Yeah. So you might be wondering where you can find this type of snake, and you can actually find it in BC and even around Kamloops here. So they tend to live in forested areas, kind of with places to burrow and near water. And so if you're out and about hiking in Kamloops and stuff like that, you can find them like Tronquil Creek, Peterson Creek, places like that. But you can find them all kind of in southern BC up to about Williams Lake area, and then down to down into the kind of western United States. Okay.
We should have a question of how long the snake is.
Oh, I actually don't know exactly how long she is. If I had to guess, I would say what, like 30-ish centimeters?
How long can they get?
30 to 80 centimeters. So kind of in between, yeah, between 30 and 80 centimeters. I don't know her exact length, but I would kind of maybe guess around 30 centimeters. I'm not the best estimator, so I don't know. This type of snake too, they are a species of special concern here in BC, and like I mentioned, they are illegal to have as pets. Lots are prey for other snakes and birds and things like that, and lots also get killed basking on roads. So snakes are obviously cold-blooded, so they do need the sun to help warm themselves. So lots of times they'll come up onto roads because they absorb all that heat, and lots unfortunately get hit by vehicles and things like that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are these snakes dangerous if they bite you?
So they're not venomous. They're actually quite a docile snake, so they don't tend to bite or anything like that. If you got it mad enough, it might bite, but they're not venomous or anything like that. They also have quite a small little mouth as well. I don't know if I got a close-up of her face, but you can also see she's got quite tiny little eyes and not kind of a really distinctive neck, so she kind of looks like a really long sort of worm, or like a long tube. Yeah.
The other thing with biting is we always like to say here that any animal can be dangerous and can bite. So while these snakes typically won't, and if you know what you're doing and know how to handle them, they won't. It's always a possibility that something will go wrong, or if the snake gets too stressed. So whenever we handle animals, we always have to be on the lookout for marks of stress, for possible things going wrong, times we can't handle them, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and especially with wild snakes as well as other wild animals, we always want to make sure we don't touch them, we just look from afar, give them their space, and kind of admire them from a distance.
Which is the part I want to go to. So both of these snakes are here at the wildlife park, and you can see the rubber boa Karina in our snake wall. You actually can't see Kiara, our ball python, directly in our snake wall. She's kind of behind in the back area. But you can also see these snakes if you came to the park and booked a private animal encounter. And so we actually run these things called private animal encounters, where right now we're only in small groups of about 10. We're in this classroom right now. We'll bring an animal in, it'll be me, Lex, or someone else from our department coming in with this animal to show people and to show off and sort of just get a really cool, very close interaction with it without touching the animal like that. Because unfortunately, our guests cannot touch our animals right now. Yeah, I just saw a question about can we like book somebody to see them. So I'm gonna answer that.
Yeah, I have another question.
Yeah.
Are snakes invertebrates?
Actually, this is what I wanted to bring up. I thought was really cool. So we can actually add a lot of props to show. I really like this stuff. So this is an X-ray of a snake, and you can just see. A lot of people think snakes don't have bones, that sort of thing. You can see how many bones they have. It's kind of like one giant spine with a huge amount of very small ribs that can all move around and sort of shift a little bit, like human ribs. I think that's all of the props I wanted to focus on.
Yeah.
Again, with this ball python, you will see them in pet shops and in stores around that, but you never see a snake like this in BC. You will occasionally see these snakes in BC. Rare boas are kind of rare to see because, again,
They like to burrow, and then they're crepuscular and nocturnal, so they like to be active dusk and dawn and at night. So they're quite hard to see. Plus, they camouflage really well. You see, they're that like olivey green brown color, so they're super hard to see. So if you see one, you're really lucky. It's
yeah,
really cool.
they're not super common to see in the wild. And I think with that, that's about all we want to focus on with these two snakes. And actually, last bit I want to end on is that these snakes are, again, they're both constrictors. They're actually in the same snake family. So it's really interesting just how different, like even this Burmese python skin, they're all part of the boa constrictor family. And so normally people think boa constrictor, they think like giant anacondas, they think ball pythons like Kiara here. Most people don't know that we have a boa constrictor that's, well, it's very small, but it's naturally found in BC. So it's a super cool thing to sort of think about, that we have all these animals that are connected just in very different ways, so it could look extremely different between the two of them.
Yeah.
And I think with that, that's everything that we wanted to focus on today. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Do you have a question?
No question.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many bones do they have, especially in the ribs? Any ideas?
Ooh.
That I don't.
You can count them all in that picture.
I don't actually know. And again, that also depends on the size of the snake. So snakes can vary so much based on how big they can get, how often they shed. Captivity, they'll shed a lot more and get a lot bigger. And as they shed, they'll get a little bigger, and actually, like as they get a little bigger and grow more of that spinal cord out, you'll get more of the small things coming in.
We can definitely research it though, and see if we can
Yes.
find a general average, what they kind of have, and post it in the
I wonder if
comments.
there is a general average. It would vary quite a bit, but there might be a cool average. So we'll post in the comments after this video and look it up. Anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. Just thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks everyone for watching. Again, I've been Alex. This is Lexa. Hopefully you can all come to the park soon and see these animals. If you want to book stuff, just contact info or booking at the wildlife park. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Bye.